The rain had stopped, but the sky was still bruised. A silver Bentley rolled through the empty road near a quiet hospital on the outskirts of Seattle. It was past midnight, no security outside, no reporters, no press, just a man in a tailored black suit. Under a flickering street lamp, fans frozen on the steering wheel, he stared at the hospital doors without blinking. Inside that building 3 years ago, he had spoken the most dangerous sentence of his life. "I can give you the world, but not if you bring that child with you." She hadn't cried. She had only looked at him for 5 long seconds, then turned and walked into the rain with the baby and without looking back. Now the same man sat outside the same hospital and his heart was making a sound he had never heard before, not during boardroom wars, not during mergers, not even during the funeral. Why? Now why here? Why, after 3 years, he stepped out of the car, no rushing, not breathing, as if silence might hold back the truth a little longer. Desk was empty, just a clipboard, a single flower in a dry vase, and a child's drawing taped to the corner of the window. Man with cold eyes and a big black car, a small girl waving at him with the words written in shaky blue crayon. He came back 3 years ago. He had everything: 24th floor office with glass walls, a company ranked in Forbes' voice that made people rise when he entered the room. He also had her Melio. She was not from his world. She wore old sweaters. She took the Bush-made tea without sugar, but she had a calmness in her voice that felt like safety, and he had been chasing safety all his life. When she told him she was pregnant, he didn't get angry. He got quiet. She thought he was thinking, but he was calculating, not about the child but about the headlines, the investors, the quarterly balance. Told her the truth, the way only rich men tell it, without guilt, without shame, and without flinching. "It's not the right time. I can give you everything, but not this." She had nodded, then said something he never forgot. "Never asked for everything, only for the right to hold my child without begging for your permission." No, back in the hospital, he stood before the pediatric wing. Through the glass he saw rows of beds, toys blinking softly like stars in a dying sky, and in the last bed, near the far wall, a little girl sat holding a book upside down. She had Amelia's eyes, but his silence. She didn't move when he entered, as if she had seen him in dreams, or worse, as if she didn't remember him at all. The nurse touched his arm. "You're her emergency contact. Now there's no one else on file. We tried calling the mother, but was all she said, and that was all it took." Asterisk, asterisk. He walked toward the bed, each step heavier than the last. A man say to a child who should never have had to ask that question. What does power mean when a 4-year-old sees through your soul? What is success when you are the reason she learned what goodbye meant too early? He wanted to sit asterisk, 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 but his knees wouldn't bend, so he just stood there trying to find words in a mouth that had only known business deals, not bedtime stories. She looked down again and said, "Mommy said rich men don't cry, they make others do it for them." She turned the page of the book, still upside down. He saw her fingers shaking. The hallway, he found Amelia's chart: accident, multiple injuries, no one claimed her, transferred from out of state. Name listed as Amelia Grant, status unknown. He took the chart to the counter. Where was she brought from? Who signed the intake? Where is the original report? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The nurse hesitated, then pulled out a thin brown envelope and sealed inside. A photo. It wasn't Amelia. It was him standing beside a car outside a courthouse 3 years ago. The envelope had no return address, only a post-it inside written in that same blue crayon. "You told me to choose. Now you live with the answer." Outsider. Rain started again, but he couldn't feel it. The little girl had fallen asleep, book on her chest, one hand curled in a fist. He sat beside her for the first time in 3 years. He had nowhere else to go but his phone. Buzzed board language, waiting a press conference, scheduled a client, flying in from Singapore. He to know, when is redemption real, or is it just a word men like me use when we're too late somewhere on a broken road near the Nevada State linear car sat abandoned, its driver's side window shattered, blood on the steering wheel. But no body found, only a wallet, a photo of a woman and a child. The police report said suspected runaway, possibly targeted. Case remains open, and in a small hospital, a man sat beside a child who didn't know if she should trust him, and a question still hung in the air like fog in a war zone. Was he to later? Was this his last chance to undo the damage he caused? He had never known how to sit still, not in meetings, Not in silence, not in life, but now he didn't move, not even when the nurse came in quietly and checked the girl's pulse, not when the 4 bipped, not when the hallway light flickered above them like a dying star. He watched her chest rise and fall, too small for her age, too fragile for his mistakes, and yet still breathing. Still, here he took out his phone, not to check the market, not to open emails, but to scroll through photos. Nothing personal. Lonely image of Amelia buried between 2 screenshots of profit forecasts. Sand, none of the child, nothing, not even a blurry memory. What kind of man forgets the face of the child he once refused to love? What kind of man now sits beside her, hoping she forgets? He ever did. The nurse returned with a clipboard. Her tone was kind, but the words weren't a need. Insurance, confirmation, we need emergency care, released hand, we need to know. Nothing that could carry the word home in her eyes. He signed the forms without speaking, because silence had cost him everything once, and now it might be the only thing he still knew how to use. She stirred in her sleep, hand whispered something he couldn't hear. He leaned closer. She was dreaming, and in the dream she was crying, calling for someone, but not him, not him. In the hallway, turned and walked out without a word. The nurse glanced inside, then hesitated. Had the CEO's name written in block letters? She handed it to him, and photograph a motel, door room 6, and a note. Your past isn't gone, it just changed its clothes by morning. That girl was stable. The doctors nodded. The machines calmed down. The sky outside had turned a soft white. He carried her to the car, wrapped in a hospital blanket. She didn't speak. She just held the drawing she had made, the one with the man in the black car, and now he saw it for what it really was, not memory. One, Amelia once said, felt like a heartbeat under the trees. It smelled like cedar to stand, something that had waited too long to be felt again. He made her warm milk. She didn't drink, it just held the cup between small hands and asked one question, is my mom dead? He didn't lie, but he didn't speak either, because truth without proof is just another cruelty. She asked again, but this time quieters. She coming back because I don't like the sound of your house. It doesn't hum like she did when I slept at night. He stood outside on the porch, phone in hand, calling numbers he hadn't used in years. Private investigators, former intelligence, contacts one journalist from New York who owed him through his fingers already, and if Amelia was gone, she might take what was left of him with Irby III. The girl started humming to herself. Soft tunes, no lyrics, just tiny rhythms like the heartbeat of someone trying to remember their safety. Sat across from her, learning to breathe with her, learning to wait, to not interrupt the silence. Then she spoke again. She said, you wouldn't come. She said, rich men love their time more than their children. He asked, did she say I didn't love her? She nodded, then added, she said, you never learned how. He left the room, not in anger, but in the kind of pain that turns men into shadows of themselves. He found the old safe opened. Inside was a box she had left behind her. Handwriting on the top, for when you finally stop running. Inside, de la Tray, birth certificate, but not just hers, an other one, same hospital, same, you're different name. He blinked, then read Aganand. The truth hit him harder than her leaving ever had. There had been another child before, the one he had refused, and he never knew. He sat down, hands shaking, reality crashing over his mind like waves in a war zone. Had Amelia lost a child before? Had she tried to tell him? Had she run not just from his rejection, but from a life already haunted by grief? Was this girl the second chance he didn't deserve? Was she the only living piece of someone he had destroyed without even knowing it? The fire crackled in the fireplace. She curled up in the blanket, eyes heavy. She whispered again, if mommy's not coming, can you stay till I fall asleep? He nodded, sat beside her, laid his hand gently near hers, and for the first time in years, he felt something real. A Tony whom, not from the house, but from inside him. Then his phone buzzed out. Message from the investigator, we found the motel, but not her. Only blood, and a screen turned black, and the wind outside changed direction. He didn't move for a long time. The fire was still glowing behind him. The girl was asleep on the couch, wrapped in silence and hospital cotton, but the message stayed on his phone. The motel, the blood, the phone, his phone. He had lost control of many things in life, but never his identity, never his security. And now someone had her, or had hurt her, and left a message through the one object that defined his world. He dialed back the number, no response. Then again voicemail, but not his own. In a different voice, cold, contract recorded in a single breath. You chose your name over her life. Now we'll see how long your name survives without her. He dropped the phone, not in fear but in rage, then remembered the girl still asleep, still unaware, still believing this man was capable of saving anything at all. He stepped outside into the dark. Child, the investigator, directly. What else did you find? Whose blood? What else was at the scene? The voice on the other side was quiet, then said, "Sir." Was something carved into the wall. It looked like a question. 3 words, me or baby. That phrase, that same phrase from 3 years ago, spoken in a luxury apartment now, written in blood on a motel wall. Did trauma echo? Did memory stalk? Did pain have a way of turning sentences into weapons? Was Amelia trying to speak from the other side of something worse than abandonment? Or was someone else playing God with his guilt? He walked down the path behind the cabin into the trees until the lights from the windows disappeared. He remembered that night 3 years ago. Amelia's face, her silence, the hospital corridor, the child she carried in her arms like a shield against him. He thought he had chosen success. He thought he had protected his name. But now that name was carved in blood, next to a sentence that had never stopped echoing. What the kind of man chooses himself over a child? And what kind of woman disappears for 3 years only to return through violence and riddles? In the morning, the girl asked to go outside. She pointed to the trees, said she wanted to pick flowers for her mom. He didn't stop her. He walked beside her, holding a small basket she carried with both hands. She hummed again, the same rhythm as before, soft-like. She was remembering something that never finished happening. Then she said, "I think she's trying to find Ushi. Always said the woods talk if you listen close." He knelt down, looked her in the eyes. "What else did she say? That you would only come when the world got quiet enough to hear your own heartbreak? That night he couldn't sleep. The investigator sent more updates. A security cam footage from outside the motel, blurry. A woman, hair tied back, carrying something. Then a second figure, male, taller, wearing gloves. He paused. The frame zoomed in. It wasn't Amelia, but the man. He recognized the posture, the tilt of the head, the same as one of his former executives. A man fired after a lawsuit. A man who had vanished into silence. Why now? Why her? Why this child? Had he been followed, or had someone waited for him to destroy something so deeply that revenge would feel justified? He drove back to the city, left the girl with a private nurse at the cabin. The city looked different, colder, smaller. His penthouse was untouched, but he walked past it, went instead to the archives of the company. He opened old HR files, termination records, security reports, found the name Wes Carter, legal assistant, brilliant and stable, and fired 3 years ago after leaking internal documents to a rival firm. The last address listed was a rehab center closed down last year. No forwarding contact, no family, but one note on the file had shared a ride with Amelia. During orientation training, he called the number listed disconnected. He pulled out the envelope from the hospital. Egwin looked at the photo. The courthouse zoomed in on the background, and there barely visibly man standing across the street, holding a camera. West, this wasn't just revenge, this was obsession. Head west followed. Amelia used her, turned her pain into his vendetta. Was Amelia even still alive, or was the voice on the phone someone else pretending to be justice? Back at the cabin, the girl was sitting by the window. She said something without turning around. "You're going to leave?" Ignorant you. He shook his head, sat beside her. She looked at him for a long time, then said, "He told mommy you'd choose your Nimand. You did so. She made me promise not to believe in names anymore, in voices that stay." He whispered, "Do you believe mine now?" She didn't answer, just rested her head against his shoulder, and for the first time, she didn't helm, she just listened. That night he received a final message. "The motel has been burned, evidence gone, only one thing left, a key with a number etched on it, not a room but a date, the day he had made her choose." A fire crackled again, but this time he didn't feel the warmth he felt the countdown. The wind outside had changed again, colder, heavier, like it was carrying voices from places that should have stayed forgotten. Stared at the key, silver scratch, the date etched across it in crooked lines. 3 years ago, the day Amelia walked out, the day he made her choose. A message attached had no sender, just one line: "If you want answers, bring the child. Come alone." He didn't tell the nurse, it didn't call security, didn't inform the police. This wasn't something law could untangle. It was a detailed sentence, a reckoning. He looked at the little girl sleeping on the couch, her hand holding the same drawing now folded at the edges faded, where her fingers had clutched it too tightly at night. He picked her up, gently wrapped her in the thickest blanket he had, and placed her in the car, the same car Amelia had walked away from 3 years ago. They drove in silence through forests, past the city toward a location only the key could unlock. It wasn't a hotel, not even a house. It was a warehouse, old, forgotten, half the windows broken, but one door freshly painted clean. He parked, heart still, mind already preparing for a truth he couldn't control. He carried the girl. She didn't speak, but opened her eyes as they reached the door. She whispered, "This place smells like her." He paused, looked at her. Like what? Like when she cried after you left, like dust on her sweater, like the way she never let me sleep alone the first week we moved inside the warehouse. There was no one at first, just empty crates, edge-canned, one chair facing a screen. Then it turned on and her voice filled the room. Amelia on it. Leve recording. Her face appeared pale, calm, and blinking. "If you're seeing this, it means I'm Gnor. I'm not safe for you. Waited too long." She paused. "I loved Ubud. I never trusted you with a child, not because you were cruel, but because you were empty. You needed the world to see you as powerful, Evan. If it meant the people closest to you only saw your so I left because our daughter deserved someone who would choose her first, not last. But I knew this might happen. I knew someone would use our past to break you, and I knew you might come back to Lazzo. I prepared this thumb screen, changed photos, documents, CTV clips, court filings, names, dates, everything. Wes Carter had been following her, twisting her grief into his anger. He had planned this for years, targeting her as a symbol of the man who ruined his life. The motel, the blood, the messages, all staged, all calculated. But one thing was real. Amelia had vanished, not by choice, but by force. The screen faded and one final message played, her voice again. "If you truly love her, protect her from the part of yourself that left us behind. Let her grow without fear, without your name, unless that name finally means something more than money. If you do that, then maybe, just maybe, the story doesn't end in silence." The girl had been watching Turquoise Delise. Wide she looked at him, then at the dark screen. Is she really gone? He couldn't say yes, he couldn't say no. He only said she fought for Ushi still is Ivan. If she isn't here, they left the warehouse. No one followed, no trap trigger, just errand. A hollow building, now filled with a ghost. He drove until dawn, parked near the sea, watched the waves crash. She sat beside him, still holding the blanket, still gripping that paper drawing. Then she whispered, "I don't want to go back to that big house. I want to stay where people don't forget me when their phones ring." He nodded, looked out at the water. The world had taught him how to win, but not how to love now. A child was teaching him how to stay. Weeks passed. He left the company, moved into a small home near the woods. He cooked breakfast, braided her hair, read every bedtime story twice. No press, no interviews, no statements. Learning to live without needing to be seen. But some nights, the wind still brought messages. A package arrived in, marked inside, day sweater, torn, blood-stained, and a USB sticky. Waited until the girl was asleep, then played the file static. A man's voice, "We took everything from me, so I'm taking everything you never knew how to hold. The girl is yours now, but the mother, she belongs to the silence." He sat there, shaking, eyes burning. He picked up the drawing, folded it again, whispered to the empty room, "You don't win, not this time." He walked into her room, sat beside her, watched her sleep. The war wasn't over, but for the first time he was on the right side of Eton, somewhere in a basement far from cities. A woman blinked against a dim light, eyes bruised but breath still rising, and she whispered, "Oh, come." He never learned how to love, but he's learning how to fight.